When I was 29 years old, I was diagnosed unexpectedly with ADHD inattentive type. One day, I was at a routine appointment with a mental health provider, and at that appointment, I said something that made them a little bit curious. I was offered an assessment for ADHD. I did end up having my assessment after, and it was confirmed that I do have ADHD. Growing up, I struggled with a lot of things. I had a lot of trouble focusing in group settings, especially in classrooms. I took a really long time to complete tasks, assignments, and other stuff. I would constantly lose things, and it got to a point where I was extremely paranoid about losing stuff, so I became hypervigilant all the time about whether I had something with me or not. As an adult with undiagnosed ADHD, I was overwhelmed and overstimulated all the time. Doing one task would leave me wiped out for the rest of the day. I had a lot of problems regulating my emotions. One little thing could really just ruin my whole week, and I never felt stable. I never felt grounded in the way I wanted to be. I would also make a lot of mistakes. These would be mistakes that might seem obvious mistakes not to make, but because I just wasn't processing things and I wasn't able to focus properly, I would accidentally make mistakes. Every time I would make a mistake, I would have no idea how it happened. Some of these mistakes were pretty harmful. I didn't want to make mistakes like this. I cared about avoiding certain mistakes, but I had no idea how they were even happening in the first place. I had huge problems with executive dysfunction. I had trouble taking care of myself, staying organized, or just doing basic tasks that needed to be done. I would procrastinate for a very long time, and it would also get to the point where things would just end up not getting done. Everything in my life would just sort of pile up and pile up and pile up. And then one day I would understand, oh my God, everything's out of control. And when I would randomly have energy, I would get everything back on track, get organized again, and then things would sort of just fall apart again. I would set goals for myself because there were a lot of things I wanted to do with my life. I would make plans, I would make to-do lists, but I would forget about those plans and to-do lists, and then the cycle would sort of repeat. It honestly just felt like I was spinning my wheels. I felt like I wasn't really getting anywhere. I was sort of stuck in this negative cycle of being overwhelmed, being tired, trying to do things and then failing at them. It felt like I would take 3 steps forward and 1,000 steps back all the time. This was constant. And I just couldn't get things in sync. I just didn't understand for the longest time what was wrong with me. I thought that I wasn't trying hard enough and I just needed to try harder. As I got older, I did by trial and error learn how to become more organized, but this was still before I knew I had ADHD. I still wasn't as efficient with these things as I am now. And I still moved a lot slower on certain goals than I do now as someone who's been treated. So after my diagnosis, I got the treatment that I needed. I got on medication, and of course, I worked with my mental health care providers to talk about things that might work for me, work for my brain. Of course, I got recommendations, resources, etc. Treatment, especially being medicated, honestly changed my life. My working memory improved a lot. My ability to stay on task greatly improved. My ability to map things out and prioritize things was improved by a lot. I had less problems with distractions, and I just felt calmer. It's hard to explain. I just felt calmer, and things that were never clear to me, they were all of a sudden very clear. And I actually felt like I could, for the first time, finally be productive and steer my life in the direction that I wanted to go. The goals I had set for myself, I started meeting those goals quicker. And I was able to make a lot of improvements in my life, and it also just gave me a lot more perspective. It felt like, for the first time, I could actually trust myself. I could trust my mind to work in the way that I needed it to. As someone who has spent literally my whole life not being sure if I could trust myself to even do things or follow through with things, this was a breath of fresh air. I sort of compare it to being nearsighted your whole life and putting glasses on for the first time and not realizing what you'd been missing, or really experiencing a color for the very first time that you'd never seen before. That's how impactful this diagnosis and my treatment was. But despite all of these positive changes, things weren't exactly perfect either. I had a very, very long period of just anger and rage, really. I was very angry at the fact that I was missed this whole time. Spending all this time without having the tools that I needed to excel in the way that I really, really wanted to, it made me really upset and really resentful. And a lot of the time that I spent being treated for something that wasn't really the source of my issues, and time that I spent just spinning my wheels, not really getting anywhere, I was upset about all of that time being wasted, because I would think back and be like, man, if only I had had what I needed then, where would I be now? I was also a bit resentful about the fact that since I do have the inattentive type, that can often go unnoticed. Instead of maybe not being able to sit still in class, I might have just been spacing out and looking like I was in my own world. Instead of maybe interrupting people or talking a lot, I would seem like I wasn't paying attention when people were talking to me. And it's not like none of these things were noticeable at all, but during the time when I was growing up, and even still now, there was this very specific idea of ADHD that people had, and I didn't fit that at all. And there was not really that much knowledge of the different types of ADHD, nor was there a lot of knowledge about how ADHD presents in women and girls or people of color. And it just felt really, really unfair. There is no worse feeling than just having no idea what is wrong with you and nobody really having answers for you. Although I did go through that period of resentment and still do sometimes now, I have had a lot of positive changes in my mindset as well. I am no longer shaming myself for symptoms because I can put a name to them. If I have trouble processing something someone is saying to me and I'm just really delayed with it, I'm no longer beating myself up for it or putting myself down for it because I know I genuinely can't control it. If I need a bit more detail and clarity than the average person when I'm trying to process and understand information, I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm not going to feel bad about having to ask a bunch of questions. I'm not going to feel bad about needing people to explain things to me in a certain way that I can understand. I'm not going to shame myself for honestly having a lot of limits. I require a lot of rest time. I require a lot of meticulous planning when it comes to how I run my life, because otherwise I can't function. I no longer ignore what I'm struggling with, and I will advocate for myself because I know firsthand that if you don't advocate for yourself and ask for what you need, people will overlook you. It's not fair, but that is unfortunately how it is right now. I also am just better at making my needs and my boundaries clear. If I need a lot of time alone to just regulate, or if I need a lot of breaks from things, I'm not going to apologize for them anymore because this is genuinely just what I need. And instead of me asking, how can I avoid embarrassing myself, or how can I avoid standing out from other people in a negative way, now I ask myself, how can I, as a person with ADHD, get what I need in order to be able to succeed and move forward in life? Although I hated the fact that I wasn't diagnosed until I was 29 years old, I also know that there are some that are diagnosed much later in life, or some people that are just never diagnosed at all, and they never get those answers that they need. And also, aside from the age thing, even if I was diagnosed late, if I hadn't had access to healthcare, I would have never ran into the provider that diagnosed me. And I'm also fortunate to have been able to afford treatment for this. And I also just think, wow, if I hadn't just happened to say the one thing that I said that made my provider a bit curious, or if I had missed that appointment, or if I had just never seen a provider that understood ADHD at all, I would still be undiagnosed today. So I do feel very lucky that I was led to that diagnosis somehow, even if it was a little late. It does feel like things are slowly changing in this world when it comes to individuals that are neurodivergent and them being recognized. People are realizing that there's not just one presentation of ADHD. People are learning more about the inattentive type. Also, the symptoms, the signs, and the ways that ADHD might present in certain people, it seems like those are being recognized a little bit more, which makes me pretty happy because people do need to be aware of this. And no one deserves to live their entire life being undiagnosed and not knowing what's wrong with them and feeling like they have this invisible issue that no one else understands. So yeah, this is my story, and this is how being diagnosed with ADHD changed my life. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.